there's a teaching that the soul, before it comes into this world, is in the world of souls. And it's in living in this, like you mentioned before, that lovely experience of in this divine realm. And God says, no, you have to come into the world. You have to have an experience of this world. You have to do whatever it is that you're here to do. You have a purpose to be in the world. I'm going to put you in the world. So the soul is crying, doesn't want to leave this lovely, rarefied spiritual realm, crying, coming into the world. And what do we do when a baby's born most times? Mazel tov, hooray, baby. We're so happy. The living are joyous. And at the other end, the people are crying. And the soul is moving into the spiritual realms, going back into that spiritual world, and is happy. So we do have that sort of shifting of the emotional construct that we kind of like look at this with.
Before we get started with today's episode, I want to invite you, if you listen to Human and Holy, enjoy the work that we are doing, if you believe in our mission and want to see us bringing more of it into the world, consider partnering with us and supporting our work. You can visit our website, humanandholy.com/sponsor. You can give in any amount. You can sponsor an episode, dedicate in honor of a birthday, yahrzeit, someone you love. There's lots of opportunities to get involved. And if you really want to get involved in a deeper and bigger way and explore some of the exciting projects that we have coming up at Human and Holy, email us at info@humanandholy.com, and I'd love to share some of the exciting things that we have coming up and how you can partner with us in bringing them into the world. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this beautiful community. We are just getting started. Hi there, I'm Tanya Khazanov, and you are listening to Human and Holy. Today's episode is a really moving conversation with Elissa Felder, who is the author of this book, From One Life to the Next Life, The Sacred Passage After Death. And today we discuss the Jewish perspective on death and what happens after death. We speak about the Chevra Kedisha, the purification process that the body goes through. We speak about Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, and what our belief is in that according to Jewish tradition, how the body and the soul will be reunited in a future time. We speak about Shiva and being accompanied by others when in a time of grief. This book was born through Elissa's own losses and her own journey and search for answers about what death is, what happens in the afterlife, what is our belief in the resurrection of the dead, and getting very involved with Chevra Kadisha. And now Elissa is involved in preparing bodies for Jewish burial. This topic to me is so crucial to bring into the conversation. Death is such a taboo topic, speaking about death, what happens after it. And many of us find ourselves lost when we do face it in our own lives, or even just having it like as this like dark shadow and cloud that hangs over our lives and never really like diving into it and exploring it. So this is a really special opportunity to think about our mortality, to think about death, to think about the Jewish perspective on death and what the Jewish traditions around death can teach us and offer us, both in how we show up to live and how we grieve those that we have lost. If you have lost a loved one, we also speak about navigating that grief that does accompany the loss of the physical bodies of the people that we love. Thank you, Elissa, for such a beautiful conversation. I'm going to share all of her links in the show notes. You can purchase the book, find out more about her, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. Welcome to Human and Holy. I'm so happy to have you here today. I so enjoyed your book, and I'm so delighted to get to explore this topic with you. I think it's like an underspoken about topic, and it's something that's very real for all of us. And even for those of us who haven't experienced death, it kind of like sits in the back of our head as this like looming concept that we don't address head on. So I would love if you could start by introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dive in.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Elissa Felder, and I live in Providence. We sometimes call it Divine Providence, Rhode Island, which I had never heard of before I moved here.
Okay.
I grew up in England, in case you want to know what my accent is. And I married an American, and my American husband and I moved to Washington, D.C. in the 1980s.
Wow.
I trained as a nurse. We had our first child, and he had a series of medical problems, the greatest of which was a heart defect. And you know how in your life you have things that change you forever.
Yeah.
So the birth of our lovely little baby, who we named Sam, changed our lives in many, many ways. And the greatest of which, I became a mother by his birth, which was I felt very blessed by him. And his medical issues were ones that we really wanted to deal with and had to deal with and were forced to deal with. However, very sadly and against our will, he died on an operating table trying to fix his heart. So here I am, I'm 26 years old, I'm a nurse, I'm living my best life. And my little baby, who I'd poured all of my heart and soul into, died. And I didn't know anything about Jewish traditions, about death. And my burning question was, where did he go? Those of us who may be blessed with children want to know that they're taken care of, want to know that they have what they need, that if they're going somewhere, that they're warm, that they have someone to look out for them, all the things that we want our children to experience. And when Sam died, I didn't know where he went. Where did you go? And that was a piece on top of the grief, which is another story. The piece of my journey post Sam was to try to understand a little bit more about where he went. And so I have dived into that topic for the last 35 years. It happened 35 years ago. And I've learned a lot. And a lot of what I've learned, I've shared. And as I learn things, I share things. And people say, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. You should write a book about this. And so I did. I wrote a book about it. And that, again, the goal is to share the wisdom. And the wisdom that spoke to me, the wisdom that helped me in my post-Sam journey, how to recognize that those of us who are listening to this video, we're all alive. Yeah. And we matter, and what we do matters. And there'll be an end to this phase of existence. So I have, after 35 years, on some level, let go of Sam. I know he's in a good place, and I have my life to live. And I still love him deeply, so I still grieve for him deeply. So it's all those things. So I wrote the book in order to share the wisdom. I stopped nursing, and I went into the world of Jewish education and working with Jewish women. And now this is a side gig, talking about this topic and being very involved in this topic.
It's such a huge topic. The title of your book is From One Life to the Next Life, the Sacred Passage After Death. And you spoke about this is this phase of my existence, and then there's the next phase of our existence. And you really felt that viscerally when you lost your son, and then it was like, where did he go? And what is, like, who's caring for him there? And is he okay? Is he safe? Can you share any of the teachings about what does happen after death that has sustained you, or specifically sustained you then, because you've experienced quite a bit of loss since then?
You're jumping right to the core.
Yeah, let's go.
What happens when you die?
Yeah, what happens when you die?
So this again, there were not teachings that I knew about. And I think the most fundamental aspect of understanding death is linked very intimately with understanding life. So who are we, this living human being, these living people that we are? And our tradition teaches us that we are a composite of a holy, God-given, breathed into us by God himself, soul that is constantly being breathed into us, and a body, a vessel that carries the soul in this reality, in this world, this physical world where the spiritual sides of who we are is somewhat hidden. So all of us are body and soul. And our soul emanates out through our eyes, through our hands. It animates us, it motivates us. It's the part that thinks, the part that loves, the part that transcends, the part that can anticipate futures and imagines and hopes and all the things that make us greater than just a body, greater than an animal. We're holy. We're very holy. That I learned. And death is a separation of those two parts of who we are. So as the soul lifts out of its body, we call that death. And the body is the vessel. It has absorbed holiness. So we treat it very carefully and very lovingly and with great dignity and respect, the way in which the Jewish tradition cares for the body after the soul has begun its journey into the spiritual world. And the soul separates in stages. The first stage is that death experience where the soul now is hovering and aware of its body. And I'd love to tell you a little bit about that space, and we can get to that. And then there's ascensions of that soul into a spiritual realm. So the problem is that we talk with anthropomorphic terms. So we use words that can't describe the reality because we are physical and we think in physical ways. So if I say to you, the soul ascends, it goes up, it moves into a different reality.
Right.
And it's on a spiritual journey. At burial, it lifts again. And after Shiva, and after the 30 days, and after the year, and everything that living do in the merit of the person who has passed away helps that neshama, helps that soul in its purification, in its journey upwards. Again, upwards. We're using anthropomorphic terms for physical things, for spiritual things. And we await the time where a purified soul and a purified body will reconnect at a time in the future where there will be what we call techiyat hametim, the resurrection of the dead, where the spiritual cleansing that the soul has gone through and the body has gone through will bring us to that time where they will reconnect and there will be that existence for all eternity. So on some level, to understand this phase of existence, we're bookended. Soul comes into the world, locks into a body, lives its life, and then separates until there's a temporary separation of the soul from the body. And then they will reunite again at the end of days after the Mashiach. So it's temporary separation of living from the dead. That to me was so comforting. Okay, I don't get to hold Sam. I don't get to take care of Sam. I don't get to take care of all our loved ones who have predeceased us. But our teachings are that there will be a time in the future where we will reunite with our loved ones who have died ahead of us. And the soul and the body temporarily separate, go through their separate processes, and then come back together at the end of days.
Wow. I found myself so moved as you were speaking. I got to connect with your energy through your book, but hearing you speak about it and hearing like the softness within you, like in the way that you speak, like you've really experienced this, had to explore this topic in a very deep way, and you can feel the experience within the truths that you're sharing. Like you're sharing the wisdom, but I can feel you and you having to walk this path through your voice and your mannerism. So it's like really special to get to witness that. Speaking about the body and soul being reunited, like a purified body and a purified soul being reunited, Tchiyas HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. This is something that's one of the core Jewish beliefs. But for many of us, it could feel very far-fetched. Can you share how that feels to you and what allows you to really, truly believe, like, I'm going to meet Sam again, I'm going to meet my family again, I'm going to meet people again, and we're just parted for a time?
Yeah. You're asking about the process of knowing, like you mentioned, this is in our prayers. We pray and we declare God as faithful to the dead, that he will resurrect the dead. We say this over and over and over and over again. And I suppose like many of our prayers, we say them, and then every now and then they click. Oh, I really want to understand this a little bit more. I want to understand what this means. So I think in order to answer your question, Tanya, I'd like to speak a little bit about the work I do with the Chevra Kedisha. So the Chevra Kedisha are the volunteers, the people, the Jewish people who care for the deceased after they have died. And I'm very active in that realm. And I have found it to be perhaps the catalyst to really thinking about what Tchiyas HaMesim means as you care for a body and soul, and you feel the soul in the room. You walk in to take care of a body, but you're not. You're taking care of the soul and the body. And you're talking to the soul, please forgive me for anything I'm going to do. We're very aware that the soul is in that room. And I think the more we talk to the soul and the more we use her name, so women prepare women, men prepare men. So I'm going to speak in the feminine because that's the language I use, right? So I'm walking in to take care of a woman who's died, a Jewish woman who's died. And we're aware of the soul in that room, and we talk to her, we use her name, and we're going to take care of you, and we're going to elevate you, and we're going to help you on your journey. And we're here to comfort you. We're here to be what you can't be anymore because you can't do anything, but we can because we have life. And so we're going to come in and we're going to elevate you. We're going to pour water on you because God says God will purify you with water. So we pour water. And as you do that over and over and over and over again, and as you start to learn some of these spiritual underpinnings of our practice, and you realize and you think about, I'm talking to a soul and she can't talk back to me, but I know she's listening to me. I know she's here and I know she's comforted by me. And I'm not preparing you, my beloved sister. I'm not preparing you for death. I'm preparing you for life. So as we go in and do that, so you asked me about Tchias HaMesim. How do I have a relationship with Tchias HaMesim? And I think, this is the first time I've actually spoken it out, it's in the recognition that as a Chevra Kadisha volunteer, I'm aware of and my intention is that I am preparing you, my sister, on the table in the funeral home. I'm preparing you for life. Because you'll get up one day. Wow. And you'll reconstitute one day. And you think, how's that possible? It's so miraculous sounding, which it is. And so we have teachings from various seminal texts in our tradition that compare some of these ideas to the radical transformation we experience in our own lives. So for instance, a butterfly comes out of a cocoon, but what went into the cocoon was a caterpillar. Doesn't look anything like the butterfly. It went in, decomposed. I've never opened a pupa, but that's what I'm taught, that it becomes mush. And then somehow miraculously out comes a butterfly. Or you take a seed and you put the seed into the ground and the seed has to decompose. It has to become one with the earth, as does our body, in order for there to be a new growth in the future, in order for that seed to sprout and bloom and blossom again. So it's these, I guess, as you do it more and more and more, and you think about this more and more and more, and you say that the prayers that refer to that, it becomes part of your thinking. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think that your experience in the Chevra Kadisha of preparing the body, I love the way you said that, preparing the body not for death, but for life and for the reunification of a purified body and a purified soul allows you to really witness like this body will be reconnected with its soul. Right now it's like experiencing that separation. But what comes to mind is one of the things that I noticed that like struck me in your book was when you spoke about death, not as death, but as a birth into something new, into a different reality. And so there's a different world that the soul enters after death. So we think of death as like this decay and this like period of nothingness, but really the soul enters into another phase of being and another experience. I'm curious to hear about that and also how we connect that back to, so why come back here? If there's another world that's as worthy or valuable or another beautiful life to live as a soul without a body, then why the Jewish tradition of returning to the body?
You might be heading a little bit out of my pay grade here, but I will definitely share things I've learned and things that I have incorporated into the way I think. So I've learned from various different Kabbalistic texts, one of which is called the Ma'avaya Bok, which was written by a Kabbalist in the 1600s in Modena in Italy. And there's another seminal book for Chevra Kadisha people called The Bridge of Life. Maybe not just Chevra Kadisha people, but it's called The Bridge of Life. That's another text that talks a lot about these topics. So this world is temporary, and many, many, many references to that in our tradition of this is a lobby, this is a corridor, we're heading towards something. We needed this world. If you go back into our text and you go back to the beginning of Genesis, where Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they brought death into the world. So for us in this reality, and they were exiled from the garden, but they want to go back into the garden. They want to go back there because there they had this intimate and all-encompassing and beautiful relationship with the Creator, with God. And that's what we're about. We're about having a relationship with God, however we do that. So we're exiled. We're in that post-Eden reality. So Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, we learn, was mostly soul with a little bit of body, and their body was less prominent. After they were exiled, the soul goes more internal and the physicality becomes more pronounced. So our bodies are what we see. But again, like our soul is who we are. It's like you are a soul with a vessel, with a vehicle that carries that in the world, which is the body. Mm-hmm. We're looking for that relationship. We want to get back into that relationship. So death on some level, which is hard for us to appreciate, is a gift. Because it allows the soul to go into the spiritual world, go through its purification process. The body does its purification bodies, comes back together in a purified world where everything is in that divine bliss, in that Garden of Eden experience forever, which was the, quote, the original plan of God, that he could bestow goodness upon us in that intimate relationship. So this world is almost like the antechamber, and that's how it says it in the Ethics of the Fathers, the antechamber for, right? So the temporary separation is in anticipation of the end game, which is Olam Haba, which is the world to come, where it will all be more spiritual like it was in the Garden of Eden.
So this is kind of like playing devil's advocate on our experience, our perspective on death, which is that if death and the next life is, and our experience of like being souls disconnected from bodies is so powerful, then why be in this world? Why remain in this world? If it is like a gift, divine bliss, what, from your perspective, is our reason for being here and our tether to this world?
Yeah, because we have work to do. We have work to do. We want to get back into that. What do we have to do? We have to bring godliness into the world. We have to shine. We're souls and we're partners with God, and we want to bring divine light into the world by how we are and what we do and how we speak and what we do, all the things that we have the potential to be in this world. We are working to be the best we can be. We'll elevate the world so we get to that place. We are partners with God to bring the world to that place. Does that make sense? And I can tell you, when you walk into as a Chevra Kadisha member, any mitzvah, any connection to God elevates the world, brings more light into the world. We say we have to be, we're the light unto the nations. What does that mean? It means that we are as living people with a holy soul, capable of being and doing good such that divine light comes into the world. That's our job, to bring up the world so that we merit to get to those ends of days. That's the work to do. And it's hard and it's not easy. And we're imperfectly human, so we mess up a lot. Yeah. But we have ways to come back. Ways to do teshuva, ways to return, ways to understand. Written into the fabric of the world is our capacity to recreate ourselves, to redefine ourselves, to better ourselves as best as we can. And when you get to that end of your life, when your soul leaves your body and the Chevra Kadisha walk in, what we do, this is really, really, for me, life-changing. The Chevra Kadisha speak to the deceased in ways that we elevate every part of the body of the deceased to its highest potential. The head was used for pure thoughts. The eyes only saw beautiful things. The ears only heard the right things. The mouth only said the right things. And nobody does that because we're human, right? Everybody messes up. And the Chevra Kadisha has the intention that every part of our body was used, of the lady in our care, was used perfectly. We're bringing her to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the divine, into the spiritual world, with our intention that she used her body properly. Properly meaning beyond our human capacity to do. But we want you to know, dear sister, that we see you not as a body. We see you in your potential, in the potential you have to only do and be good. And then we pour the water and we declare you pure, and we ask God to take care of you. And everything's been done the best way it can be done. And now you're elevated into the spiritual realm. So we are at the end of the life, knowing that we all haven't done life perfectly. The Chevra Kadisha kind of sew it all together. We bring all the threads of your life together and say, you are pure, my dear sister. So I guess the question was, what's the point of this world? The point of this world is to be and do good and to bring divine light and divine energy into this world as best as we can.
Yeah. I think you answered that so beautifully. And you are someone who has been so up close to it. Chevra Kadisha puts you very close to it on a consistent basis. How has that shifted the way that you show up into the world, the way that you experience life?
Good question. I definitely see life as fragile. I don't take any life for granted, any day of life for granted. I'm in the funeral home sometimes every day. And I don't ever, and our teachings say, don't ever get used to a dead body. Don't ever get used to that. It should always be jarring. It should always be shocking. It should always move you. And when you take care of somebody who's deceased, you're so aware of your life. You're so aware, I have blood in my body. I have strength. I can move. I can do all these things. It's so, I don't quite know what the word is, but it makes you feel very grateful for your life every day. My mother, Alav Hashem, she died when she was 56 years old. So I am older than my mother was when she passed. And therefore, I don't know why I'm here. This is a thing. When you go older than the age of your parent when they died, it becomes almost like I'm on borrowed time. Like, why am I still here? How come I get to live this life beyond the age that my mother was the cap, and now I'm beyond that? So why am I here? And our teachings that are about your life is important and that God has faith in you. You know, we wake up in the morning and there's a common prayer to say, Moda ani lefanecha melech hayvek ayom shechazat abba nishmati behem la rabba emuna secha. Not, and God has faith. We have faith that God will take care of everything in the world for us and make everything the way it should be. And we understand God has faith in us. There's something I'm supposed to do today. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be a little thing. It can be that phone call or that smile at the person in the supermarket or opening the door for someone or something. We have all these opportunities to do and be good. So that prayer of Moda Ani in the morning, I'm here, got another day. Sam didn't get another day. My mother didn't get more than 56 years, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to also separate out the teachings and the understanding and the big pictureness of mortality and then the grief. And I don't ever want to mitigate or pass judgment on people's grief because it is so much a part of their love. And we're people with love. We love each other and we love the Jewish people and we love God. And therefore, when we lose people or we feel disconnected from God, there's a grief, there's a loss. And so I don't want to say, well, now I have all these teachings, I don't feel loss and I don't feel grief. We do because we love so much. And it's the other side of the coin of love is grief when we lose what we love.
I love that you brought that in because it's obviously something that could get lost in the conversation when you speak about like the beauty and the significance and how centering it could be to think about our mortality and about death as a passage into something else that's going to, funnel back into this world. It could forget the human experience of death, which is loss and grief and such unimaginable pain, which you speak about Shiva in your book and your experience of Shiva and that accompaniment through your grief. What's so beautiful in Jewish traditions is that we have this accompaniment through grief, this communal showing up in a real way. I'd love if you could share a little bit about that, about your experience or even just about the Jewish teachings on Shiva and what that could offer a person who is going through grief, their own grief from loss.
It's a great question. The sense that people need other people. I think that's the foundation. We're not isolated in our experience of this world. We need each other. And some people need lots of people and some people just need some people. But it is built into who we are that we are social beings and that we have a need. Like the biggest torture is to be isolated, to be in solitary confinement. We're reading about that with the hostages in Israel. They're in Gaza and they're in tunnels alone. And on top of everything is this isolation. And when you're grieving, when you're experiencing something really hard, I think for me, there's a need to be with other people in a way that is comforting and helpful, but to be witnessed. I think what we do when we sit with somebody who's in pain or suffering is that there's an aspect of my presence that brings comfort, and that I'm witnessing, I'm paying testimony to your experience. You're not going through this alone. I'm here with you. And yes, it's shocking your world and it's rocking your world. When Sam died, my world was completely slammed shut. The door to Sam's life slammed shut. I had no access to him anymore. And in that moment, that's how I felt. Chaotic and adrift, and I didn't know how to move forward. And it was people showing up, however they showed up, that gave me courage and strength and hope that I don't have to do this alone. So I think most grief experts will say that to help people, and again, grief is like a snowflake. Every grief experience is different, but in general, you need some people to whom you can express your grief. And at some point, I couldn't find those people because it was too big a grief. I couldn't share it with my husband because he had his enormous grief. And my mother was sick at the time. I couldn't share it with her. I really felt alone until I looked up. God, why are you doing this to me? How do I get through this? Don't leave me. Don't leave me. I need you. As much as I recognize you gave me Sam, and I'm grateful for him. And as much as I recognize you took Sam, I need you to help me because I can't do this alone. I need all the things. I need an experience of God that can hold me, that I can cry to, that I can be angry at, that I can wail at, that I can open my heart up to in ways that I can't because I'm stunted in my capacity to share that with other people. I'm worried that they're going to not hold it. Can they hold my pain? But God can hold my pain. So again, so let's go back to community and what community provides. Community provides witnessing to your experience. They provide comfort in that place of aloneness. They show up in ways that make you feel loved. There's a woman in Israel whose son was murdered a few years ago. And on the day of her funeral, a dear friend of hers left a rose on her pillow in her bedroom when she went to get dressed to bury her 14-year-old son. And she uses that as an example of love. It was a rose that somebody left on her bed saying, I'm thinking of you and I love you. So these little things, sometimes we say, oh, it's a little thing, it doesn't matter. It really does. Yeah. And when your heart is cracked open, these little acts of love, these what might not seem like a big thing to the person on the outside is huge to the person experiencing it. We sat Shiva for a 4.5-month-old baby. We were in our 20s. We were sitting in our apartment. We were the only people sitting Shiva because there was no other mourners, really, primary mourners. And what courage, I look back, what courage people had to walk into that room and sit with us. And they did. And they didn't know what to say. And actually, there was nothing to say. There was nothing to say. There was just, I'm so sorry, and I'm here with you. And I'll cry with you. And I'll let you, the mourner, speak about what you want to speak about. You want to speak about Sam, speak about Sam. If you want to cry, I'll cry with you. If you want to talk about, I don't know, the weather, I don't know, something else. No judgment from anyone walking into that room. And I think sometimes it's very, very hard to be quiet and to be silent and to recognize that coming in and sitting down and just being there is really, really big without saying anything. So that I learned. And I learned people said things to me that weren't so helpful. And it was hard for me to be told different things, well, it's all for the best, or, you'll have other children. Well, maybe I won't have other children, or I don't know that it's all for the best. So sometimes just be careful, maybe that you leave yourself at the door when you walk into a Shiva house, that you are there for the mourners, and to recognize wherever they're at is where you want to kind of plug in. It's hard because we all walk around with grief, and we walk into Shiva houses, and now we have our grief, and we want to tell you about our losses and my mother who died, or my grandmother who died, or when this happened. So like some of those things, you have to gauge it. But our tradition teaches us that the ideal is to allow the mourner to be the one to lead the conversation.
Right.
And then hopefully it'll go well. But showing up and being there and being present and not going. Like people did avoid us because we exuded pain.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. So I recognize there were people who could come and there were people who couldn't come.
You said that so beautifully, that the power of the Shiva house is just in being witnessed in your pain, and that nothing needs to be said, even the fact that the mourner initiates the conversation, that it's really on your terms if you want to speak or don't want to speak, and just fully being witnessed in your pain. And then even you speaking about Hashem being part of that community for you, that when you didn't know if a person could hold the enormity of your pain, and even your spouse couldn't hold your grief because they were busy carrying theirs. And so it was too much, being able to turn to Hashem and say, God, you can hold this.
I'll tell you another thing, actually. There's a couple of teachings that are helpful, I found helpful. Again, I'm talking 35 years of process. So none of this was in my knowledge bank, in my toolbox after Sam died. So I was a little bit on very uncharted territory.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a teaching that the soul, before it comes into this world, is in the world of souls. And it's in living in this, like you mentioned before, that lovely experience of in this divine realm. God says, no, you have to come into the world. You have to have an experience of this world. You have to do whatever it is that you're here to do. You have a purpose to be in the world. I'm going to put you in the world. So the soul is crying, doesn't want to leave this lovely, rarefied spiritual realm, crying, coming into the world. And what do we do when a baby's born most times? Mazel tov, hooray, baby. We're so happy. The living are joyous. And at the other end, the people are crying and the soul is moving into the spiritual realms, going back into that spiritual world and is happy. So we do have that sort of shifting of the emotional construct that we kind of like look at this with. So let's imagine that this soul, from now it's lived its life, it's done its thing, it's moving into the spiritual realms. And the Zohar, which is a very Kabbalistic text, teaches us that the soul goes back and forth between the Shiva house and the grave during Shiva. So the soul is aware of your mourning. The soul is aware that you're sad, or maybe you're not sad. Maybe there's complicated grief and it's not so easy to mourn for someone that you had a complicated relationship with, but you're sitting Shiva, and the soul is aware of that and is aware of your process and is in a realm of truth. So all the things that person did in this world, they are now released from that, and they have a greater sense of reality, a greater sense of truth, a greater love for the living. And so just to think about that a little bit, like, was Sam, I didn't think about it at the time, but was Sam listening to our Shiva? Was Sam going back and forth between the Shiva and the grave and listening to his parents who were in so much grief, so much love for him? We have another tradition that at the end of Shiva, you get up and you walk around the block. And so there's a teaching that says that the soul is aware of your walking around the block. And part of the message that the soul gets by you walking around the block after you get up from Shiva is that, okay, I see that the living people who mourning me and loved me are getting on with their lives. They're moving back into their world. So too, I, the soul, can move back up into keep going up. I'm not going to be held back. I'm going to see that the living can recognize that they have to keep living. And you have that hole, and you have that grief, and grief can be a friend. Grief can be something that makes you more compassionate. It can make you have a greater capacity for emotional experiences in this world. So maybe we don't have to see grief as an enemy. We can see grief as something that helps us to live more fully.
Wow.
Because we push it. We say, no, I have to be strong. I have to be strong. Well, maybe it's stronger to be grieving. Maybe it's stronger to cry. Maybe we need to cry. If you go to a Shiva house and people are crying, don't try to distract them. Let them cry. Let them cry. Let them communicate to you how sad they are.
I think it's so beautiful that you said, Sam watching you and seeing so much grief, so much love, and using those two words back to back, the grief and the love.
Yep. and the love. Go back to the Chevra Kadisha walking into the funeral home to take care of a Jewish sister. Don't ever get used to it, because we love you, fellow Jewess. We love you. We love, it's so interesting. I'm part of a community of Chevra Kadisha women around the world. And I wonder if one of those women in London washed my mother. Whether I know who it was, or then they don't have records from the 1980s, sadly, so I couldn't find out who was on the Chevra Kadisha team. They didn't have digital computerized records back then. But it doesn't matter, because these women are like doing God's work with love. And I'm comforted knowing that. I'll tell a story. Can I tell a story?
Please.
A number of years ago, my father passed away. And I went back to England. I don't go to England. I don't know people in England anymore. I've been in America over 40 years. So I was at my father's funeral, and the Chevra Kadisha team was there. And one of the rabbis came up to me and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And I looked at him. I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who he was. Don't know that many people outside my family. And he said, he gave me his name. And he was somebody who I had gone to youth group with when I was a teenager. It was a youth group that helped me on my journey to becoming more religious. And we were all sort of youth leaders together in this youth group. And he said, "I used to come to your house when we were in this youth group together, and I knew your father." And he was so lovely, and he would always welcome people, and he would always make me feel welcomed in your home. And when I saw that he was in the funeral, in the cemetery, I asked if I could be on the team to wash him and prepare him for his burial, because I knew him in life. And now I wanted to take care of him in death, because I remembered him fondly.
Wow. And
to me, that was a kiss from God. Thank you for giving me that wink. That beauty of who was in that space, who took care of my dad after the time he died till he was buried. This rabbi who knew him in life. And the chances of that happening are very small. Right. So I really did feel like there was a divine intervention here. And it was God giving me a message saying, your dad was taken care of.
You had that experience too, where you cared for your close friend's daughter, and you were the Chevra Kadisha who attended to her. What was that experience like for you to care for someone that you knew and loved and were connected to?
I've been doing Chevra Kadisha for 20-something years, 25 years. I've washed friends. I've washed children of friends. I've washed mothers of friends. Every time it's a spiritual experience, and I feel very blessed to have this be something I'm able to do and capable of doing. My daughter lost a 3.5-month-old baby. Her yahrzeit was yesterday. And who better to wash her than her grandmother? And how hard is that? Probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, and one of the most beautiful things I've ever done. So here you are with this little baby who, again, I don't want to be doing this, but we don't have a choice that she died, that God decided that this was the end of her journey in this physical world. And so who better to wash her than her grandmother? And how hard was that to do? And perhaps there's this other piece, which is, I want my daughter and her husband to be comforted to know that I was there. And I washed her, and I took care of her, and I kissed her, and I loved her, and I prayed for her, and I put her in a little box, and then we buried her in the ground. And we continued on with our lives, knowing that she has changed us forever. That she has changed us forever, just like Sam changed me forever. That my daughter's family lives in the shadow of Leora Tichia's life and death. And I say that because I do think it's a blessing. On some level, we're blessed, even if it comes with suffering. I'm blessed to have done that, even though it was couldn't see half the time, and I had so many tears coming down my face. Like I couldn't see what I was doing. And little Leora Techia, your grandma's here taking care of you. Maybe you'll go up there and you'll be with your Uncle Sam. I guess, yeah, it's our Uncle Sam. And you'll be with my mother, and you'll be with all these people. We do have teachings that when the soul leaves the body, it experiences the divine and experiences predeceased relatives who come to meet them. That to me is comforting. You know, who welcomed Leora back into the spiritual realms?
Wow.
Very high souls.
Do you feel any access point to those souls that you've lost in your life physically? People that have come into your life and that you've lost and you say changed you forever, and that there's blessing in that suffering, which like is so enormous to hear you say in your experience, to be able to like, that you're able to touch that. Is there any point where you have felt an ability to access the souls that are in a different phase of life, in a different realm, where you have felt connected to them, like you heard them, like they, some type of connection to them?
The short answer to that is no. I know other people do and have. I know there are people who have experiences of dreams where deceased relatives will come back and give them messages. I haven't had that. I haven't. I go there. There is a tradition within our Jewish way of visiting graves, and I didn't visit Sam's grave for a very, very, very long time. It's in Philadelphia. I live in Rhode Island. It wasn't so convenient. It wasn't anything that was really part of my thing to do. And then a few years ago, it became possible to go before Rosh Hashanah, which is a traditional time to go to a grave. And again, the mystical teachings teach us that the soul of the deceased still has a relationship with where it's buried, where the bones are buried, where the body is. And there's more concentration of the soul in the month of Elul, which is the month before Rosh Hashanah, and on the anniversary of death on the Yahrzeit side. That's a time where the souls are more concentrated. There's more presence. So we went to Sam's grave, and it was around the time I'm writing this book. So I'm really digging. I'm really going back into those feelings. I'm really trying to understand what was Sam, where was Sam, why was Sam, where is Sam, all over again on many different levels. And I'm sitting at his grave and I'm crying and I'm talking to him and I'm talking to him. And I think he's listening to me. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter whether he's listening to me or not. I needed to say those things. And it was part of my grief therapy after Sam died. I had to go to therapy to start walking again in the world. And she asked me, or she led me to talk to Sam, talk to him, tell him what you want, tell him what you love, all the emotions, just speak it out, speak it out, speak it out. Talk to him. And I did. And then 30 years later, I'm sitting at his grave. I'm sitting at his grave and I'm speaking to him again. So I did feel him. But we do have a tradition not to call back your relatives, except for weddings. There is a tradition to go to the graves of your deceased relatives and invite them to family weddings. So we invite ancestors back for weddings. But in general, it's not something that we're encouraged to do, to bring the souls back into this world. Our job actually is to help elevate them.
Right.
In the spiritual world by who we are. We're the feet in the world. We're the ones still walking here. We're the ones still with the opportunities to do all the things that we can do because we're body and soul.
Yeah.
So that's the concentration. And as you know, we're a religion of life. L'chaim, it's all about life. It's about living this life. And that's where we focus. And might I suggest that having death as a bookend helps us be more focused on how we live. Don't take it for granted.
Right. I'd love to close by hearing your perspective or your advice to anyone who has experienced loss or anyone who has a loved one who's experienced loss. We'll start with someone whose loved one has experienced loss, how to navigate and support them in their grief, how to give them the support that will truly hold them and help them as they navigate this uncharted territory of their loved one leaving this physical world.
That's a really huge question, Tanya. The predicated upon everybody's grief is different.
Right.
And there's similarities and there's commonalities. In the immediate aftermath of a loss, whether it's 100-year-old or 120-year-old grandparent, parent, or a little baby, there's chaos and there's grief and there's disbelief and there's all that messiness of the reality and how it can sink in, and you're busy and you're trying to figure out like what the funeral arrangements are going to be and what's going to happen. And then you're sitting shiver and it's like, it's a whirlwind. And then things settle. And then like the difficult part actually is post Shiva, we have a 30-day mark where we recognize loss and to, Again, I'm not suggesting there's one way to do this. I would never do that. And I have read and I have experienced that for many people, not all people, many people, expression of your grief is important. Whether it's talking to a person you trust, to find those people to whom you can talk, or to going to support groups, or going to a therapist, or crying when you need to cry, and be okay with crying. Be okay with not being okay. Because your life has changed. They call it attachment grief, actually, when you lose a child or you lose somebody who you're very attached to in life. That when they die, you're still attached to that person, but in a different way. And you carry that hole. And sometimes you open the hole up, or you walk into the hole, and sometimes you go around the hole. And sometimes you'll watch a movie or you'll listen to somebody talk, and it will trigger things in you and allow you to grieve or to emote. And sometimes it takes a lot of strength to allow that emotion to wash over you. But if you do, and if you can, and when you do, there's a peace on the other, a peace, P-E-A-C-E. There's a peace at the other side of that. So is grief a cave? When you go in, you're like in it and you can't get out? Or is grief a tunnel? And you experience grief, but then you come out the other side and then you go back into the tunnel. And the tunnel has a floor. It's not a free fall. There's a base to that grief. However you walk in the grief, and the world looks different. And the world carries on without your person in it, but the world looks different to you. And you want that person to still be alive, and you want that person to still be recognized, and you want to use that person's name because they existed and they mattered, and you still love them and they still matter to you. So all these things are things that you grapple with when you lose somebody, and it's a process. They say it's like it's not a straight line up. It's an up and down, and there's days where you feel better and days when you feel worse, and days where you cry and days when you don't, and things that trigger you and things that don't. And it's a journey. So here I am. I'm 35 years later. I still cry over Sam, but I don't. I also live over Sam. So it's and I'm happy that he gave me that hole in my heart on some level. I don't say that, I say that in a very deep way, that whatever reason Sam had to be in the world, one of the reasons I believe Sam was in this world was to change me and to change my husband and to change my subsequent children. Thank God I've been blessed with children. They grew up, quote unquote, in the shadow of death, but they don't see that as a bad thing, I hope. I think they see that as a blessing. So when my daughter lost her baby, she didn't say, babies don't die. Why's my baby died? She can say, why did my baby die? But babies die. I know that because my mother lost a baby. So and so if we talk about our grief a little bit more, perhaps it can help other people. And I think there's an undercurrent of grief that we all walk around with. And every now and then you need to let it out. And that's healthy. And that brings you into warmer and more intimate relationships with other people with whom you can share that grief, and they can share their grief with you. I write about in the book about the loss of a peer of one of my daughters who died in a car accident when she was 26 years old. And when I see her mother, it's not infrequent that I'll say something about Danielle. I'll say something to her using Danielle's name. And I have learned that that is actually helpful. If we avoid the topic, it is the elephant in the room. So if you're strong enough to be able to bring it up and be able to receive whatever it is that person is going to express, that you also have to gauge what you're capable of receiving from the person that you're in relationship with, that you want to hold.
Right.
Not everybody can be in the pain. I said to my daughter when she lost her baby, I can hold your pain because I've been there. I know what that feels like. And I want to be in the proverbial crashing waves along with you if you want me there. And if you don't want me there, that's okay. But know that I'm standing on the shore, ready to jump in. Anytime you ask me, I'll jump in with you.
Wow.
So yesterday we had a yacht site little gathering, and I hope that she's comforted knowing I'm there, and I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud that in her loss, she's still moving and creating and doing and living with the love that she had for her daughter, Leora Tichia, and now can plant that love. Not that you lose that love, but you take it and you put it, where am I putting it? I'm putting it in my other children. I'm putting it in my husband. I'm putting it in my parents. I'm putting it in my community. I'm putting it into the Jewish world. I'm putting it into random people in Israel I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm like putting it there. So we have this love that kind of exudes out of us, and we don't have that person that we used to shower it upon. Where else is it going to go? Let's think about that, because it's all a love story. I really think it's all a love story. It's a love story about how we lose and love, and we love each other, and we love God, and we love our lives. And, there's a lot of love that is weaving its way through this whole narrative.
You mentioned how we all live with an undercurrent of grief. I would love if you could expound on that. What did you mean by that?
I think we've all lost people. I think we've all experienced loss. And maybe it's not even people. It could be relationships. Or it could be the loss of something that you invested in, that you put all your energies into, that you were in relationship with. When that goes, there's a loss. And there's grief that comes with that. What do you do with that grief? And I think at some point, I was very angry when Sam died. There was a lot of anger coming out of me because I didn't understand, why is this happening, and what's going on, and why is this God doing to me? Am I a bad person? There was a lot of anger I had. Yeah. And I do apologize to anybody in those days who I was angry with, because I didn't know where to put my anger. I think at some point you could say, okay, I can continue in life as an angry person, or I got to figure this out, because I don't want to be in this world angry. I want to be in this world loving. And as much as I can't understand how God does what God does, and we read about it in last week's Torah portion, when Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai and he has an encounter with God, and he says to God, tell me why you're doing what you're doing. Tell me your ways. And God says, you can't know my ways. You can't. You're too in the physical world, locked in. You cannot know my ways. And it says, you cannot know me and live. And that is one of the sources for how we understand that when you die, you have an experience of God. You cannot know me and live. In this world, you can't have that kind of experience of knowing why God does what God does. So I can't know why this is happening. And now what? What am I choosing? How do I choose to show up in this world? How do I choose to understand God? And I do choose to see God as loving and good. And because I can't understand it, doesn't mean it's not loving and good. And we're not in a world where it's all revealed goodness. We're in a world where it's suffering and pain and death and all the things. And let's go back to where we started in this conversation, that at the end of days, it's all going to be understood why it happened to happen the way it did. But we can't know that. So what do? We're angry when there's injustice. We're angry when people suffer. We're angry when all the things that are happening. And what does that motivate us to do? Hopefully it motivates us, as we have seen in our Jewish world, to give and to love and to show up and to volunteer and to go to shivas and to hold hands and to all the things that we show up to do, because that's where we take our energy.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your beautiful teachings. Thank you for sharing your own personal wisdom. This was so beautiful. I'm taking so much with me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so lovely to talk to you. I could keep talking for hours.
I know. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved it. And if you did, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating or review. Helps other people find the podcast, obviously uplifts us and shows us that you are loving and connecting to our work. You can find us on Instagram at Human and Holy. Follow us on YouTube. Videos come out every single Sunday morning. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, as well as humanandholy.com. We love hearing from you, so reach out to us at info@humanandholy.com with reflections, guest recommendations, questions, things you'd love to hear more of. We truly love hearing from you, and your feedback fuels our conversations and the conversations that come in the future. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.
אלוקיי זכינינה בתורתך ובמצוותיך לחבר את נשמתי תמיד אליך לחבר תמיד אליך